My name is Lucy Wilson. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my life, I believed my family was close. Not perfect, not rich, not the kind of family that took glossy vacations or posted matching holiday photos, but we were steady, predictable, safe. At least, that was what I told myself. We had Taco Tuesdays, Friday board games, Sunday dinners with dry pot roast, green beans, and my father's terrible jokes that made my mother roll her eyes like she hated them, even though she always laughed first. There were 5 of us: my parents, my older sister Vanessa, my younger brother Evan, and me. Vanessa was the polished one. Perfect career, perfect nails, perfect smile whenever something uncomfortable needed to be buried. Evan was charming, careless, and somehow forgiven before he even apologized. And I was the middle daughter, the useful one, the dependable one, the one who remembered birthdays, organized holidays, showed up early, stayed late, washed dishes, wrapped gifts, and never asked for much because I thought love didn't need to be requested out loud. The first time I realized something had changed, it was because of an Instagram story. Vanessa posted a quick video from a restaurant table. Wine glasses, candlelight, laughter. I paused when I saw my mother's bracelets, my father's hand reaching for bread, Evan's ridiculous watch flashing under the light. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. I texted Vanessa, "Nice dinner. When was that?" She replied almost immediately, "Oh, last minute. Evan was in town. Dad picked the place. We figured you were probably working." I wasn't working. I was sitting alone on my couch, phone in hand, calendar empty. I tried to laugh it off. Families forget. Plans happen fast. Maybe it really was last minute. But then my mother slipped during a phone call. "Your aunt said the roast at Vanessa's was perfect, and she hates roast beef, so that says something." I frowned. "What roast?" Silence. Then, too light, "Oh, just dinner last weekend." Was Evan there? Of course. And nobody invited me? Another pause. "We assumed you were busy." Busy. That became their favorite excuse. Too busy to call, too busy to invite, too busy to update. But somehow, I was never too busy for them. One night, I finally asked my mother, "Did I do something wrong?" She sounded surprised. "What are you talking about? Why do I keep finding out about family dinners after they happen?" She sighed, soft and tired, like I was a child making noise in church. "Lucy, don't turn this into drama." Drama. That word landed harder than an insult, because it wasn't meant to answer me. It was meant to close the door. I said, "I missed 4 dinners in 2 months." She replied, "It wasn't intentional." "All of you forgot me every single time?" Silence. Then she changed the subject. After that, I stopped asking, but I started noticing. Group chats got quieter when I sent messages. Photos on my parents' fridge didn't include me anymore. Holidays felt rehearsed, like everyone had memorized a version of family where my absence already made sense. The worst part was, I still showed up. I still bought gifts, still asked if anyone needed help, still smiled at tables where I felt like an extra chair someone forgot to remove. Then Robin came over. She was an old family friend, close to my mother for years. She brought old photo albums to my apartment, and we drank tea while she talked about her garden. Then she said, "It was nice seeing everyone at Vanessa's last week. Felt like the whole family was there." I blinked. "Oh, I didn't make it." Robin looked genuinely confused. "Really? Your mother said you were taking space from the family these days." Taking space. I smiled politely and changed the subject. but something inside me went cold. I wasn't just being forgotten. I was being explained away. That night, I called Vanessa. "Did Mom tell people I don't want to come to family dinners?" Vanessa was quiet for a second. "She might have said you needed space." "Did you believe her?" Another pause. "I don't know, Lucy. Things just shifted." "Not for me," I said. "I didn't shift." She didn't answer, and somehow that silence hurt worse than yelling. A few days later, I drove to my parents' house unannounced. I never did that, but I needed to see them in real life, not through second-hand comments and filtered photos. My mother opened the door and looked startled, not happy. "Lucy, is everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just wanted to stop by." She hesitated. "We're kind of in the middle of something." Behind her, I heard laughter, plates, voices from the kitchen. I looked past her. "Vanessa's here?" "Yes." "Evan?" "Yes." "Anyone else?" She didn't answer. I nodded. Got it. Then I turned and walked back to my car. I didn't beg. I didn't ask to come inside. I didn't force my way into a room where everyone had already agreed I didn't belong. That night, Evan texted me. "Heard you stopped by. You good?" I replied, "Yeah, bad timing, I guess." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Mom says you're being dramatic." There it was again. Dramatic. The word families use when they want the damage to sound smaller than it is. So I stopped trying. Not to punish them, not to prove a point. I just wanted to see what would happen if I stopped being the only person holding the rope. No reminder texts, no holiday planning, no calls just to check in. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then 2. Nothing. No calls, no "we miss you," no concern. Just silence so complete it felt rehearsed. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. The name on the screen made me freeze. Julian Mercer, my childhood best friend. We hadn't spoken in years. I answered carefully. "Julian?" His voice was low. "Hey, Lucy. I almost didn't call, but I think you need to know something." My stomach tightened. "What happened?" He exhaled. "I ran into Evan at a bar last weekend. He was drunk, talking too loud. He said your family doesn't think you'll ever figure it out." I stood up slowly. "Figure what out?" Julian hesitated. "That they've been cutting you out on purpose." My hand tightened around the phone. "Why?" His answer came quiet, almost reluctant. "He said your father's trying to keep you away from something involving the family trust." I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with the lights off, Julian's words replaying in my head over and over again. Family trust. The phrase sounded foreign, like something that belonged to wealthy strangers in movies. Not my parents, with their faded dining room chairs and coupon drawers stuffed beside the microwave. But once the idea entered my mind, memories started rearranging themselves. Conversations that stopped when I walked into rooms. My father quietly changing subjects whenever finances came up. The way my mother once told me, "Everything's already handled. You don't need to worry about those things." At the time, I thought she meant paperwork. Now I wondered if she meant me. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge. Not yet. I just needed truth, without family edits wrapped around it. Her name was Diane Keller. Calm voice, sharp eyes behind thin glasses. She listened carefully while I explained everything. The dinners, the distancing, the strange silence, Julian's call. Then she asked one question. "Do you believe your exclusion was intentional?" I opened my mouth to say no automatically. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "Yes." That single word changed everything. It took nearly 2 weeks to gather documents. 2 weeks of pretending to function normally while something heavy sat inside my chest. I went to work, answered emails, smiled through meetings, but every night I came home exhausted from carrying questions no one in my family cared enough to answer honestly. Then Diane called. "We found it." I drove to her office in complete silence. She slid a thick folder across the desk toward me. "There is a family trust," she said carefully, "and you are listed as a full beneficiary. Equal split between you, your sister, and your brother." Relief hit me first. Then confusion. Then why? There's more. My stomach dropped. She turned to another page. "2 years ago, your father amended the trust." I stared at the document. My father's signature sat neatly at the bottom of the page. My mother's underneath it as witness. The amendment added a clause tied to family cohesion and active participation in familial relationships. In plain English, if I appeared disconnected from the family, my share could be withheld indefinitely or redistributed. I read the paragraph 3 times before my brain fully processed it. Then suddenly, every dinner invitation I never received felt less like rejection and more like strategy. Every excuse, every silence, every carefully crafted story about me pulling away. They weren't confused by my absence. They were manufacturing it. I looked up slowly. They built a paper trail. Diane nodded once. "Yes." Something inside me cracked quietly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to let reality in completely. Because this wasn't emotional neglect anymore. It was calculated. My father, the same man who used to sign birthday cards with little smiley faces beside my name, had legally created a system where excluding me could eventually cost me my place in the family permanently, emotionally and financially. I laughed once under my breath. Diane frowned slightly. "Lucy?" I shook my head. "I spent 2 years wondering what I did wrong. You didn't do this." But they had. And worse, they had done it together. I drove home afterward in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers hurt. At a red light, I suddenly remembered a dinner from years ago. My father refilling everyone's wine glasses while Vanessa laughed about vacation plans. I remembered walking into the kitchen mid-conversation and everyone going quiet. At the time, I thought I imagined it. Now I knew better. That night, I tested them. I sent a simple message in the family group chat. "Hey, are we doing anything for Aunt Cheryl's birthday next weekend? Happy to help organize." Scene. No replies. Hours later, I sent another. "Also happy to host Thanksgiving this year if Mom wants a break." Nothing again. No response. Not even a thumbs up. I stared at the silence and finally understood something terrifying. They had gotten used to living without guilt because they convinced themselves I wouldn't notice the difference. The next morning, I sent an email. Short. Calm. Professional. I recently reviewed documents related to the family trust and the amendment added 2 years ago regarding family participation requirements. I'd like to meet in person to discuss this matter directly. Lucy Wilson. No accusations. No yelling. No emotion. 2 days later, my mother called. I let it ring. Then again, and again. Finally, she left a voicemail. Lucy, we don't need lawyers involved in family matters. That's not healthy. Let's just talk privately, you and me. Not, we're sorry. Not, you deserve an explanation. Just damage control. Evan texted next. Why are you acting like a lawyer all of a sudden? Then Vanessa. I didn't know the clause was real. If that's true, I'm sorry. Hers was the only message that sounded human. I agreed to meet them Saturday evening at my parents' house. Same dining room. Same table. The same place where I used to help set plates before realizing they were learning how to eat without me. When I arrived, everyone was already seated. My mother wore that brittle smile she used whenever she wanted tension hidden beneath appearances. My father looked older than I remembered. Not weak, just diminished somehow. Like carrying secrets had finally started bending his spine. Vanessa wouldn't meet my eyes. Evan leaned back in his chair, pretending boredom, but his knee bounced nervously under the table. I sat down calmly and placed the folder in the center. Nobody touched it. You changed the trust, I said quietly. Silence. No denial. That almost hurt worse. I looked directly at my mother. You witnessed it. She opened her mouth, then looked at my father instead. He cleared his throat. It wasn't supposed to become this. Then what was it supposed to become? A precaution. Against what? His jaw tightened. Conflict. I stared at him in disbelief. You isolated me for 2 years to prevent conflict? You were already pulling away, he snapped suddenly. You stopped participating. A hollow laugh escaped me. You stopped inviting me. That's not true, my mother interrupted quickly. Really? I pulled out printed screenshots. Because I have months of unanswered messages asking about family plans. Nobody spoke. I continued before my voice could shake. You told people I wanted distance. You excluded me from dinners. You rewrote the story so thoroughly that even I started questioning myself. Vanessa finally whispered, Lucy. But I kept going. You didn't just erase me emotionally. You documented it legally. My father rubbed his forehead like I was exhausting him. You've always been independent. The sentence hit me harder than yelling ever could. There it was. Their real justification. I was easy. Low maintenance. Quiet enough to neglect without immediate consequences. My mother spoke softly. You never needed us the way Evan does. I stared at her. That doesn't mean I deserved less. Silence swallowed the room completely. For a second, I honestly thought one of them might apologize. Instead, my father said something worse. We didn't think you'd ever find out. The honesty of it knocked the air out of me. Not regret. Not guilt. Just surprised they got caught. I stood, slowly. I'm not here to scream at you. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice stayed calm. I'm here to inform you that I'll be challenging the amendment legally, if necessary, publicly. My mother looked horrified. You're really going to sue your own family? I looked around the table, at the carefully maintained faces, at the people who spent years slowly teaching me I was optional. Then I answered honestly. You stopped being my family a long time ago. I walked out quietly. No slammed door. No tears. Just the strange numbness that comes when grief finally turns into clarity. And sitting in my car afterward, staring through the windshield at the house where I grew up, I realized something devastating. They never expected me to fight back because they built the entire system around the belief that I would keep accepting less forever. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I received an email from my parents' attorney. Not from my mother. Not from my father.
A lawyer.
The subject line read, Trust Amendment Resolution Proposal.
Cold. Clinical. Efficient.
I opened the attached PDF while sitting at my kitchen counter, drinking coffee that suddenly tasted bitter in my mouth. The proposal was simple on the surface. The amendment would be reversed. My status as a full beneficiary would be restored immediately if I agreed not to pursue further legal action or public discussion regarding family matters. At first glance, it looked reasonable. Then I reached the fine print. Beneficiary agrees not to publicly or privately challenge family decisions made in good faith. I reread the sentence slowly. Good faith. They had excluded me for years, manipulated family narratives, and quietly built legal conditions around my absence. And somehow, they still wanted language protecting themselves as the victims. I forwarded the document to Diane immediately. Her reply came 20 minutes later. They're trying to buy your silence. I called her. If I reject it, we move forward officially. What are the odds? Better than they think, she said calmly. Especially because they never disclosed the amendment properly. The court won't like that. I looked out my apartment window at the rain sliding down the glass. For years, I thought peace meant staying quiet. Now I realized silence was the reason they got comfortable hurting me in the first place. So I replied with one sentence. I won't exchange my voice for conditional belonging. After that, everything went quiet again. But this silence felt different. Not punishing.
Final.
My mother stopped calling. Evan disappeared completely. Even my father, who once controlled every emotional current in the family, retreated behind attorneys and paperwork. Only Vanessa reached out. Can we meet? Just us? I almost said no. But something in me still mourned the version of my sister I thought I had growing up. So we met at a small coffee shop downtown. She arrived carrying an old photo album against her chest like armor. For a while, we just sat there awkwardly. Then she opened it. Birthday parties. Beach trips. Christmas mornings. There was one photo of me at 12 years old, blowing out candles while everyone smiled around me. Vanessa touched the edge of the picture gently. You were always the happiest one, she said quietly. I swallowed hard. No, I whispered. I was just the one trying hardest. Her eyes filled instantly. I didn't know about the amendment. But you knew I was disappearing. She looked down. I told myself it wasn't intentional. That's the problem, I said softly. Everyone kept telling themselves that. We talked for almost 3 hours. Not to fix things. Some things don't survive honesty. But for the first time in years, someone in my family finally stopped pretending the wound wasn't there. Before leaving, Vanessa said something that stayed with me long afterward. They needed you quiet because if you spoke up, they'd have to admit what they did. A week later, Diane officially filed the petition challenging the amendment. And strangely, once the legal process started, I stopped obsessing over it, because my life slowly stopped revolving around my family's approval. For the first time in years, I lived without waiting for invitations that never came. I traveled, started sleeping better, decorated my apartment the way I wanted instead of how I thought guests might prefer. I laughed more too, mostly with people who knew absolutely nothing about my parents. And that helped. Because when people love you without inherited expectations attached to you, you start realizing how exhausting conditional love really is. Months passed. Then, one morning, Diane called. We got the ruling. I sat down immediately. The amendment has been voided, she said. The judge called it coercive manipulation of family dynamics. I closed my eyes. Not overwhelmed. Not triumphant. Just lighter. That's it? I asked quietly. That's it. After we hung up, I didn't celebrate. I made coffee, opened the window, and watched the sunrise spread slowly across the rooftops outside my apartment. Because the best part wasn't winning. It was finally knowing I hadn't imagined any of it. A week later, another certified envelope arrived. Official confirmation restoring my full beneficiary rights. No apology attached. No personal note. Just legal language. Cold and emotionless. Exactly the same way they tried to erase me. I tucked the papers into a drawer and went for a walk. Halfway downtown, I wandered into a bookstore and bought a dark blue leather journal. That night, I opened to the first page and wrote, "I was never difficult. I was simply the first person who stopped accepting less." The journal became a ritual after that. Not pages about my family. Pages about myself. Who I was outside the role they assigned me. Not the reliable daughter. Not the quiet fixer. Not the emotionally convenient one. Just Lucy. Vanessa visited sometimes after that. Never with our parents. Never with Evan. Just us. One evening, while we cooked pasta together, she said quietly, "They still talk about you carefully. Like saying the wrong thing might break something." I stirred the sauce slowly. It already broke. She nodded. I think they thought silence meant peace. I looked at her across the kitchen. No, silence just meant I was carrying all the pain alone. Years passed quietly after that. Not dramatically. Not with revenge. Just distance softening into permanent truth. I never reconciled with my parents fully. They mailed birthday cards sometimes. Short messages. "Thinking of you. Hope you're well." I never answered. Not out of cruelty. Out of honesty. Because any version of love that required erasing me first wasn't something I could safely return to. Eventually, the estate settled completely. No more court dates. No more negotiations. Just the quiet collapse of a system built on control. And in the middle of rebuilding my own life, I met Daniel. He was patient in ways that felt unfamiliar at first. The kind of man who noticed when I went quiet and didn't punish me for it. The kind who made space instead of demanding it. We got married 3 years later in a small mountain ceremony with 20 guests. None of them related to me by blood. Every single one chosen. At the reception, one woman asked carefully, "Do your parents know about the wedding?" I smiled into my champagne glass. "They had years of dinners without me," I said calmly. "I think they'll survive missing one celebration." People laughed softly, but I meant every word. Not bitterly. Just truthfully. Years later, a handwritten letter arrived from my mother. Real handwriting this time. No attorneys. No manipulation. Just one paragraph. "We did see you, Lucy, even when we acted like we didn't. We were wrong in deliberate ways, and I hope someday that truth sits differently than it does now." I didn't reply, but I didn't throw it away either. Because younger me, the girl who spent years wondering what she did wrong, deserved to know the answer was nothing. Now I host dinners sometimes. Small ones. Warm lighting. Too many candles. Friends crowded around mismatched chairs, laughing over badly timed stories. And whenever someone thanks me for inviting them, I always say the same thing. No one here had to beg for a seat at the table. Because that's the only kind of family worth building.